My name is Glenn Brewer. I have been uh, creating and self-publishing comics since, like 2000. Yeah, 2000. I think I put out my first work, 2001. I'm most known for a six-part series called Ascario Dar. It was basically about these three vigilantes kind of fighting crime and inequality in this fictional inner city. But what I'm currently working on now is a five-part mini series called The Rain, which is basically about a young lady who goes to work. She's a chef. She gets up, she goes to work, and the world literally begins to fall apart around her. Buildings are exploding, bridges are collapsing. She doesn't know why. So the first arc is basically about her trying to keep herself alive and figure out kind of what's going on around her. I don't know. I've always been interested in storytelling, uh, and I've always been a pretty decent artist. I mean, even since I was a kid, actually came to Columbus back in '92 to go to college. I graduated from CCAD, so I kind of refined my skills there. I think just generally, I've always been interested in what I like most about comics is it's kind of the midway point between uh, film and like prose or books, because you have uh, the written word, but you also have the pictures. They're obviously not moving, but I always like that kind of that middle ground. And I mean, all you need to create a comic is really just paper, pen, and your imagination, as opposed to making a film. So I was always kind of drawn to that. I work primarily black and white. I don't do very much color at all. I don't really know why that is. I mean, when I was in school, I trained in traditional mediums, oil painting, watercolors, color pencils, markers, all that stuff. But I just kind of moved more towards black and white, and that's all I pretty much do now. In terms of my style, uh, a lot of people, when they see it, they think that it's like woodcut etching, like the old, like you'd see like in those old biblical like illustrated Bibles and stuff like that. But actually, the story is this: so what I do is I create value, contrast through the distance and the thickness of lines, as opposed to like what a lot of people do, which is cross hatching. You know, um, crossing lines over one another to get variations in value. I use the distance the lines are from one another. So the farther apart they are, the lighter the surface appeals. The closer they are, the darker the object or character, whatever appears. So I started using this. Started using this style because of a book I saw a long time ago called it's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but it was illustrated by illustrator Bernie Wrightson, who since passed away. And I was just I was like, man, this is a really interesting style. So that's kind of where I got it from. I learned later that he got that kind of technique that he was using in that book from an older illustrator named Franklin Booth. So those are the two artists that I owe that probably influenced me the most in terms of my inking style. I would say also that my process is I work with regular pencil and paper. I scan pencil, paper, and pen. I scan the works into the computer, use Photoshop to kind of tighten it up to format my books. But I have not really gotten into the digital drawing much, like people drawing on the tablets. I haven't gotten into that. So yeah, that's something I want to explore, kind of get into. I know that'll speed up my process some, but I'm still kind of a traditional person for the most part. So let me say this. I should have mentioned this too. Uh, because a lot of artists, particularly when I was young and even in college, everybody inspired. The end goal for everybody was to work for Marvel or DC. A little bit later on, Image came along, so a lot of people wanted to work for Image, but it was typically those three. Um, but I went the self publishing route, uh, and my the I would say my biggest inspiration or influence for going the self publishing route was a book. It came out in the '90s called Brother Man. It was about by I don't want to mispronounce the names of the one brother now. It was two brothers. The person that's most associated with now, I believe his name is pronounced Dawood Anabuile. I think that's how you pronounce it. But it was him and his brother uh, who put out a series of books in the '90s called Brother Man. They wrote and drew the books themselves, got the money together to publish it, sold hundreds of thousands of copies. Uh, Even I think, and they did all of this without being in any major comic book stores. They did not go through Diamond. They did all of this, all of their distribution either by mail, which is how I got most of my books, and through the black bookstore circuit, um, which in black bookstores are still around, but as with a lot of bookstores just in general, that's just kind of been a transition from actual physical print books to digital stuff, and we can get into Amazon and how it kind of killed a lot of brick and mortar stores, but that's how they distributed their books, to black bookstores, to black expos, black events and stuff like that. So they were the ones that kind of showed me that you can do it yourself. You can do it yourself. So I just want to give those brothers a shout out. Again, I don't want to misrepresent mispronounce their names, but anybody, most people who know me know that I was highly influenced by the Brother Man comic. So yeah, I just wanted to give them a shout out. Even if we set aside the pandemic and the protests and everything that just kind of happened, particularly the pandemic, how that kind of just knocked the legs from under a bunch of things. I mean, a lot of conventions that were going to be physical in person have all turned digital. Even to take a step back, I am having, as a creator, to relearn the marketing side of this thing, because I stopped publishing my Oscar Dari books back in 2003. After that, I was kind of just doing illustrations for people. I've done some pages and comic book work for other writers, but I hadn't self-published anything in a long, long while. So what I'm learning is that now I feel like Rip Van Winkle, because I'm like re-emerging and trying to get my book out there. And the thing that I'm realizing is that in the past, this is what I think. In the past, printing was one of the biggest hurdles to getting the book out, because I'm talking 2000, early '90s, 2000, before you had the inkjet printing, the print on demand stuff. Where if you wanted to put a book out, you had to go, I guess it's called offset printing or traditional printing, where you had to print 1, 2, 3,000 books at a time. So if you wanted to put a book out, you had to really want it. And this is before crowdfunding and Kickstarter or any of that. You had to hustle up the capital, to get your book printed. Whereas, so there were less, in my opinion, there were less comic book indie creators, just because it was such a hurdle to even get your book out. Whereas now, because of print on demand, Kickstarter, it's easier to fund, to forget about Kickstarter. Just print on demand allows you to print one book if you want, or 2, or 10, or 20. So you don't have this huge investment of capital in books you may or may not be able to move. So what I find is that while it's easier for me, in my opinion, to put a book out, there's more competition because so many people are, putting their work out. So that's the thing that I'm finding. Also, with social media, is like a difficult. It's a tricky and interesting place to navigate because I'm finding that people are just as interested in the work itself, the quality of the work, as they are in you as a person. So it's not enough to just get online and say, hey, buy my book, buy my book. You got to kind of move through the waters of social media and find your audience. Talk to them about things that are similar to your book, but you don't want to beat them over the head with buy my book every 5 minutes. So you got to kind of find these people, aggregate them, and then, hey, by the way, I have a book out. So it's a very interesting. The whole thing is very, very interesting. Very interesting process, I'd say. Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to connect with other creators that are kind of moving in the same circles that I do. There were a couple kind of like groups that popped up right after a lot of talk about the problems that Diamond was having with not being able to ship books, or laying people off, or all of that stuff that happened with them. There was a black comic kind of collective that kind of popped up, and people just kind of kicking around ideas and different alternatives and ways that folks could support one another. So yeah, I've definitely been trying to do networking, supporting other people, and people in the turn are trying to support me. I think the one thing that I guess I try to tell people is it's not always about money. Sometimes, particularly when you're dealing with social media, a simple share, a like, or a comment is support. All of those things go, you're not directly putting money into a creator's pocket, but all of those things go to help boost their post and make it more visible. So it's, little things like that can help. It's interesting too, that I guess maybe all of these things and all of these these pockets of kind of creators and fans have always maybe existed, but just maybe because they're on social media, they're so much more visible. But it's really interesting how you have these different camps that have kind of formed. And for myself, I try to be very mindful of what I say because it's interesting that the littlest things sometimes can really upset people, or people can view you as something that you're not, simply because of something you said or something you shared or whatever. So it's all very interesting. Even for instance, there's this whole, I guess people on that side will call it SJW, social justice warrior. So anything, a lot of instances, it appears to me that anything that is progressive, or women, or black folk, or people of color, people are overly critical of that kind of stuff. So, and I was talking to somebody about that. I'm like, my character in my book, she's a woman. She's heavyset, she's chubby, she's black, she has short hair, she's the antithesis of the typical comic book hero, but even amongst comic book heroines, she is the antithesis, and she's scrapping and beating up guys. So it's like, man, I'm already knowing that some of those folks are not gonna just by looking at the book, when they look at the cover, they're gonna be like, typical SJW, whatever. I haven't really ran into that, but I already know just kind of about how people move. But I think what folks should kind of do from a creative perspective, even just being online, I would say just do what you want to do. I would say create from your heart, create from make what you want to see, and then let the chips fall where they may. I didn't try to. I think that if you try to please everybody and check off all these boxes and not offend this person and not offend that person, you're gonna, your work is gonna be something that you don't even recognize. You're not gonna be able to please everybody. There are people that are gonna resonate with your work, and there are people that won't. I think as difficult as social media is to navigate sometimes, it is an excellent tool. There are all these tools that allow you to find people who would be interested in what your work is. So I think that should be people's objective. At least that's what my objective is. Not to try to convince people you should like this, you shouldn't, or whatever. I just try to find people out there who like what I'm doing and then connect with those people. So, well, I think that I think that with everything that's going on, I think comics are a good medium to kind of communicate some of these ideas, particularly when you're talking about social media. Uh, comics being both words and images, you can communicate an idea really quickly. It's more powerful. It takes less effort to create some edited video, and it's more effective than just a written post. So I see a lot of people doing really cool stuff for comics, getting the word out about, things that they believe, and political comics that speak to gender equality, equality for people of different ethnicities. So I think that people have kind of always been doing that type of work. I think that now is a really good opportunity for folks, seeing as how a lot of people are stuck in the house. Now is the time, like, if social media, is good for amplifying things, it's times 10 now, because you have more eyes in front of the computer screen, people looking for things to read. I don't know. Jim, do you know Jim Hunter? Is Jim Hunter? Is that his name? J.M. Hunter? Yeah, I don't know him personally. I've seen him. I saw him at the SoulCon one time. I'm friends with him on Facebook. I've commented on some of his posts. I've yet to really meet him, but he's doing some really, really, really powerful stuff. He has a lot of stuff to say. So I definitely would encourage folks to check out his work. I think he just dropped a new book that he printed himself, interestingly enough. So I definitely would encourage folks to check out his work. He's the first person that comes to mind, because his in my opinion, his stuff is very he has a lot to say. I'll just say that.